Dimensions, 3D, 4D, 5D. So if you want to know more about dimensions, then this is a video for you. Howdy, my alien friends. I'm Oculus, the alien next door, and today's topic is dimensions. So this is something that I wanted to get into for a little bit, but I wasn't sure how to approach the subject because everyone has so many different opinions and knowings and knowledge of different dimensions. So I do want to put a disclaimer, as I usually do in my videos, that this is something that I just channeled and it resonates with me. So it may or may not resonate with you, but a lot of this stuff actually came in such handy just for my own, personal evolution. So I figured I would share it on this channel because that's what this is about. Sharing is caring. And so let's get into this esoteric chit chat about dimensions. Now, everyone is familiar with the third dimension, obviously, because that's kind of where we're at, the material realm, where things, you can physically touch them and pick up objects and throw things and, all of that good stuff, right? So it's very easy to know what the third dimension is because we're all perceiving it every day as we go about our business. So that one, you kind of get it, like it's just physical objects. But before objects became physical, what were they? They were ether, they were in atoms, and they were in the quantum field before they slowed down and condensed into this third dimensional reality. So that's why the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension are also very important, because things that were conceived in the fifth dimension have made their way down to the third dimension, and that's where everything originates, from the fifth dimension and beyond, because that's pure. It's the pure realm of all potential. That is what 5D is. But I don't want to confuse you, so I'm going to go kind of from the third dimension, which I described, then I'm going to do 4D, and then I'll get to 5D. But I just want to say how they all kind of correlate. Just, whatever. Right? So the fourth dimension, and now this is why I said when I channeled it, this is what I see it as, what I was guided to know, is basically, sometimes people call it the dimension of time, the fourth dimension, the dimension of time. Okay, cool, we're not going to really go into that right now. What I'm going to talk about the fourth dimension, which is actually what I found that trips most people up. So the fourth dimension can be very tricky because the third dimension is physical reality and the fifth dimension is, pure potential, no thingness, right? I believe Osho was the first one that said that, no thingness, like the potential for everything. So then you have the fourth dimension, which is really the doorway, it's the bridge, it's kind of like the conduit between the third and the fifth, right? So things aren't really substantial and tangible in the fourth dimension, but it's not that pure, highest ethereal realm where it's just no thing and everything is pure bliss. Like the fourth dimension could get a little funky, okay? And I've had personal experiences in the fourth dimension earlier along my journey when I was still kind of fine-tuning my vibration and things like that. So I do have some interesting stories about that, but not for today. That'll be for another time. So the fourth dimension really, and it's not all, there's nothing good or bad. I'm going to say this all the time, but there's nothing good or bad. It's just the way that you kind of view things. So with that being said, now there are positives with the fourth dimension, and this is what I consider to be fourth dimensional activities, like using tarot cards or astrology or healing crystals like gemstones, things like that, runes, other forms of divination, things like that. This just kind of came to me. People that use a Ouija board, that's an example of a fourth dimensional game because it's a physical game, and you're touching it, and you're not supposed to touch that little magnifying glass thing, but there is a physical board and there's a physical magnifying glass. So when you play that, you're playing it in the third dimension and you're hoping to summon energy from something in a dimension above the third, right? So now the fifth dimension, they're not even gonna fuck with that. Like they're like, because it's still so attached to the third dimension. Not that they're judging it, but they're just like, it's so attached that they can't even really, like, they're not gonna waste their time, right? The things in the fifth dimension are not gonna waste their time like vibrating purposely lower to get to the fourth dimension and then to get to the third to give you a message, right? Now, I'm not condoning or not condoning using a Ouija board. I have used them personally in the past and nothing happened. I do know of stories of people that, you know, things did happen. So if you want to use it, or if you have used it, you know, I'd love to hear your stories. But don't try it or not try it. Like, if you feel compelled to try it, of course do it. But if you don't believe in that sort of thing, you don't want to touch it, then don't. But this is just my example here. So with a Ouija board is basically what you're doing, and with kind of all of these things, but a Ouija board is really like the easiest thing that I can give as an example, as like the perfect conduit from the third to the fourth dimension. It's because it's like what you're trying to do is summon energy, and even with, you know, using a healing crystal, it's still a physical, tangible object that you're relying on some sort of power, right? That you're saying, well, you know, this brings me good luck, and that's where, you know, talismans and, you know, lucky stones and things like that, or rabbit's foot or whatever, those type of things are all fourth dimensional, because they're bridging you, because you're there and you're holding a physical object in hopes and intention that it's going to bring you something ethereal, right? If you kind of get that. But with those type of things, now, you know, the power is always within you. So a lot of people, and, you know, again, like if you're, like I use tarot cards and I use healing crystals and I use astrology, and, you know, like there are different things, right, that people do. If you're into that, if you're not into that, I'm not saying that it's like a really low vibration, that no one should do that. No, because they can be used for positive things. But for example, if you are, like, let's say using a Ouija board and you're purposely summoning, you know, another energy, then that's when that funky and weird energy can come through, because it's not going to reach the highest vibration of the fifth dimension. And it's kind of like there are entities in the fourth dimension, and, you know, that's where people, you know, they talk about like demonic possession and like hauntings and poltergeists and things like that, and those are fourth dimensional energies, as was conveyed to me, because they're kind of in that limbo where they're not third dimensional and they're not fifth dimensional. So that's where the fourth dimension can get a little tricky. So with using healing stones and doing a tarot reading, or, you know, having a lucky talisman, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So don't think that's what I'm saying in this video. But they are still considered fourth dimensional things. So that basically means that, you know, you're trying to bridge, like when you do a tarot reading, right, you're trying to bridge communication from elsewhere using a physical object. Just like if you're using a healing crystal, like you sleep with an amethyst under your pillow. I do. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But you're kind of like, well, you know, your intention upon that physical object is going to bring you ethereal wellness, right? So that's kind of the idea with that, and, you know, other types of divination or like fortune telling, whatever, because, you know, that it's opening, it's like it's the conduit between the fifth and the third. And the thing with the fourth dimension, why I spoke on Ouija boards, is because, you know, you do want to sage, and you do want to, you know, like have like an incense going or something like that, just so, you know, you surround yourself in the most positive energy. And this is not for everyone, because some people, you know, if they don't even believe in that, they're not gonna, it's not going to cross their minds, right? And other people who have advanced and they're focused more primarily in 5D rather than 3D, they're not going to really need to do that as much because their energy is not as open and susceptible as someone who is living in the fourth dimension. Because I know that when I was living in the fourth dimension and I relied heavily on like my crystals, and I was like paranoid. I wanted to do tarot readings all the time, or like astrology, or like something like that, because I wasn't using it for a bad purpose, but I was so reliant on like incense and crystals and things like that, that my energy wasn't, it wasn't up to par with the fifth dimension. And I was in the fourth dimension, maybe about like, because I had started awakening, but I wasn't fully, no one I don't think is ever fully awake because there's no limit to anything. But I wasn't where I am now. Not that I'm some enlightened shaman or whatever. I definitely noticed the difference from a few years ago when I was in the fourth dimension to where I am now. I wouldn't be so paranoid about, well, I'm gonna bring out my tarot cards, so I have to make sure I sage them every time or something like that. That's just an example. So in the fourth dimension, it's kind of like, like when you're living in the fourth dimension, and I'm primarily living in the fifth dimension now, but it's more like I'll bring out the tarot cards and I'll bring out crystals, but I won't do it because I feel they're giving me power. I know that from my perspective, I'm the power. That sounds so cheesy, but I am the power, and I'm just kind of setting that intention, that stone, but the power and the good luck, or the magic, whatever it comes from me. Whereas let's say you're in the fourth dimension, and this does not go for everyone, okay? So everyone is so uniquely different, but I'm giving you from my perspective because I know that if I was guided to make this video, there are others out there who need to hear this or want to hear this. So from that perspective, at least when I was living primarily, like I had graduated from living primarily in 3D, and then I was in 4D, right? And so I was in that limbo period, and when I would toil with things, it's like I kind of felt like anxious, and I knew they were working, but I really, like, let's say I had a stone that I really liked, I'm like, that's my lucky stone, it has to go with me everywhere. Like, I put my power in the stone. Whereas now if I wear a stone necklace, or I sleep with a stone under my pillow or something like that, I'm like, this stone is beneficial because I have the power, and this stone is just kind of like a little it's like a little cushion. It's like I'll use crystals and gemstones just for what type of energy I want. Like if I want to be grounded, I'll use a shungite, or if I want to get like more channeled information, I'll use a selenite, or a lapis lazuli, or whatever. So it's more of like a flavoring now. It's not really like my whole entire meal. It's just like the spice on top, whereas before I was so reliant and dependent on that. So that's how you know when you're living in the fourth dimension, when you know that there's another force out there, but you don't feel yet that you're always connected to it. You feel like something physical and tangible must be giving you that connection, okay? And the difference with living in the fifth dimension primarily most of the time is you can do whatever. You can play a Ouija board if you want. You're in the fifth dimension. Whatever you did, you know what I mean? Like, just for shits and giggles, sure, why not? But you're not gonna look at it as something that has power over you. You're not gonna, do a tarot card reading and be like, oh my God, like this is my fate now. You're not gonna do that. They're gonna be used more as like a tool, or like a guide, or just for like an energy of the day or something like that, or a crystal. You're not gonna be so paranoid, oh my God, I don't have my lucky crystal and what's gonna happen. It's totally different. So I wear different stones different days, just depending on what type of energy I want. And I'll do a tarot card reading, or I'll pull a card in the morning or whatever, or just to see what what energy, like, should I concentrate on today. Like, it'll be more of a tool, but I won't take it so seriously, okay? So that's really an example that I can give of living in the fourth dimension and living in the fifth dimension. So the fifth dimension, when you're primarily in the fifth dimension, you know that and this is how you know, this is the biggest thing to know when you're in the fifth dimension, is you're in the moment. You're not thinking of the past, you're not thinking of the future. There is no past or future. I'm going to say that over and over again, but you're just now, because you know that everything is now, and you're totally immersed in whatever you're doing. So you can be doing something with your physical body and you know your mind is elsewhere, right? That's not something fifth dimensional. Fifth dimension takes over your entire being. Like, that sounds so crazy, but not in a scary way. Like, so if someone is really, you know, absorbed in like doing what they're doing, especially like a lot of artsy people, when they're creating, when they're, you know, doing what they're doing, when they're getting that guidance from source, like do this, do that, that's pure. That's like one of the best examples of fifth dimension that I can give you, is when you're creating something from nothing and you don't know how you did that. Or if you, let's say, you know, you're listening to music and you're not even listening to it, because I do this all the time. I always listen to the beat. I'm not really a lyrics person, I don't know. But I listen to the beat and then I'm getting ahead of myself. I always, you know, I get information faster than I can speak, but so when you're listening to music, right, like you're not really, when you're fully immersed in that beat or that rhythm or even the lyrics or whatever it is, and you're just dancing around and you're having a good time, you don't care what the fuck you look like or who's looking at you like you're weird, like that is a really, really good example of the fifth dimension, because you're just in the now. And then even, you know, you might not, meditation, that's what I was going to say before I interrupted myself, or meditation, right? If you're like breathing and you're focusing on breathing and you're just, you know, you're just relaxing and that's all you want to do, your intention was to relax, and you're fully focused on your breath and you're in that high state of consciousness in meditation, that's another fifth dimensional activity, right? Because there is nothing else when you're in the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is such a high vibration that everything is immediate, everything is absolute, and it's absolute right in that moment. So when there's something that it's the only thing on your mind, and you know, well, it's not on your mind because the mind kind of dissolves in the fifth dimension, but when you're in that state of being, of whatever you're doing, it's like you'll become what you are. So a lot of times I'll dance around, I'll look really fucking crazy. Like I'll just, you know, if I'm cooking or if I'm cleaning, I'll just like bump the music and I don't care. And then, you know, I just move however I'm guided to move. And that's like really my best example, like for me personally, with the fifth dimensional activity, because I'm not really a meditator, like just to sit and be quiet. Like I can do it, but it's more I'll fall asleep, you know what I mean? So whatever gets you in that moment, or if you're even like a content creator on YouTube, like me doing this right now, I'm actually very immersed in this moment. So if you're really into something, you could be clipping your toenails, and if you love to do that and if you're into that, then you're in the fifth dimension, okay? And when you're in the fifth dimension, things just kind of happen like right away. Like, you know, you might have been stressing over, you know, like someone was supposed to call you back or they didn't text you back or whatever, then you just see whatever, you're like pissed off and you go do something else and you start listening to music, you go for a drive or you go for a run or whatever, right? And then you're just so immersed in that moment that person will call you back in that moment, and you didn't have to do anything because you forgot about it. Like that's why they say a lot of times with manifestation, you need to forget about it. You need to be completely immersed in the moment of what you're doing now, because the fifth dimension, everything is now. There's no yesterday, there's no tomorrow, there's no an hour from now, right? Like even like past lives, future lives, they're all converging right now in the fifth dimension, okay? So the fifth dimension it's ground zero for everything that you want. That's why, like, I really recommend, you know, to anyone, just whether you're spiritual or not, like just do something that you love, even for like 20-30 minutes a day. Just do that. Even take a bath, like a relaxing bath, get some essential oils and like get in there and just relax. Just even have like 20 minutes just doing something that you love without interruption. Like that is like that worked for me. So I mean, I don't know, that sounds, it doesn't, I don't think that's bad advice, so I'm gonna say it sounds groovy. But another thing with, you know, the 5th dimension is that this is where you have kind of like spirit guides and you have your higher self. And you know, if you're someone that believes in angels and, you know, ethereal beings, I call them my 5th dimensional friends, because that's what they they are. They're my friends. They're my 5th dimensional friends. So that's what I call them. And it's just, they kind of just like guide you. You know, you're not really going to communicate with anyone in the 5th dimension. You're not going to communicate with your higher self in the 5th dimension if you're so immersed in the 3rd dimensional reality or some 4th dimensional bridge. Like, you know, if you're crossing the bridge and it's kind of foggy at both ends and you're in the center of the bridge, you know, you're like, wait, like what's going on? Like, you're not going to see the 5th dimension, you're not going to really see the 3rd dimension, you're just going to kind of be in that limbo. So 4th dimension definitely is a good path if you are, you know, in there right now, because you're headed in the right direction, because you know there's more to it than just what meets the eye that you can touch. And you know, like, it's great to use a tool to, like, if you feel that it helps you, but just anyone who's in the 4th dimension right now, just know that, you know, the power is within you. So whatever type of lucky amulet or talisman or whatever you're doing, you know, you're giving it that power. It's not the other way around. So just letting you know, FYI. And you know, the 5th dimension is just it's such an amazing place because things happen right away. There's no, and another thing, when you're in the 5th dimension, you're going to be feeling good most of the time. So another thing is to check on your mood, like, you know, see how you're feeling. And you know, a lot of people say that when someone is in a bad mood, like, it'll, even if they were in the 5th dimension, it'll pull them down. And then that's where energy vampires and psychic attack can take place, because they feed off of that lower vibrational energy. So, and I've had experiences with that wonky 4th dimensional energy, but not in a way where they're trying to trip me up or like to steal my energy. Like, I just feel like I've always been kind of intuitive about, you know, being very selective about what I want to give my attention to or what I don't. So if something doesn't feel good to me, I've always just kind of, and that's just the way that I've been. You know, I don't remember not being that way, so maybe it's just me. But you know, I don't like to feed lower emotions. I kind of just like to move forward and, you know, move upward, if that makes sense. I don't like to give that attention. So you know, the 4th dimension can be a place where if, you know, that resonates with you, that you feel like there are like energy vampires or something like that, then just know that they cannot get you once you change your mood. So it's really important to be in a blissful state. And I don't mean a fake blissful state like you're faking it, but in the 5th dimension, you're going to feel calm and content most of the time. Right? Like, if you're primarily operating in the 5D modality, nothing is going to bother you. And I don't mean that in a way where, you know, you're in a state of denial. I mean, you know, and you see and you observe how everything works together for your highest state of joy. So you know that even if there's like a tiny detour in the road, you're not going to let it pull you down into the 4th dimension or the 3rd dimension. You're going to be like, that's a detour, I'll go around. And the more you respond to things like that and circumstances and people like that, okay, you know, like if you just keep it moving and you don't like let it pull you down, then the more you're going to get used to that, and you're going to be more in a state of 5D rather than 4D and not 3D. So I don't know if this video got weird or confusing and I kind of feel like I rambled, but that was really the best explanation that I could give from my personal experience. And remember, everyone's experience is so totally different. This is just my perspective, but I know that there is going to be at least one soul out there who needs to see it right now, or wanted to see it, or this was a message they needed to hear. So if that was you, then thank you. And yeah, that was basically it for this esoteric chit chat. I'm Oculus, the alien next door. And remember, keep it elevated in 5D. Namaste, blessed, because you are.